One of the things that I learned early on when I was knitting is how to attach two ends of yarn. So when I was starting on a new ball, and the first one I tried, as many new people do, is the only knot I really knew. I was never a Boy Scout, which is a standard square knot. And so that's basically just twisting the yarn around itself and then twisting the yarn around itself twice, and then tightening up those four. The problem with that is sometimes it wasn't exactly the strongest knot to begin with, but even more so when you clip the loose ends of the knot pretty closely to the knot itself. The knot was somewhat visible. I'm going to clip that a little bit even closer for this one end. The knot was a nice small knot in essence after you clipped it down short, but it wasn't a very strong knot. It would often pull apart. And if you'd done that in the middle of your knitting, it would be kind of disastrous after the fact to have a broken thing. And so I learned square knot was not the way to go. And if I did do a square knot, then I wouldn't clip it close together. I would just weave in those loose ends of the knot on the back of my work. And then somebody told me about the magic knot, or the so-called magic knot. The magic knot is basically done by putting your two yarns parallel to each other, facing in the opposite direction, and then make two simple knots, one by bringing the bottom yarn underneath the top yarn, bring it back over underneath the bottom yarn, and then through the loop. And you just make a simple knot. And tighten that knot up pretty tightly. And then you do the same thing on the other side. You take the top yarn, you bring it underneath the bottom yarn, bring it back over and underneath your knotting yarn, and through the loop. It's very important that you get the direction of these simple knots correct. Tie that tightly. And so you end up having two simple knots on either end of the two ends that you bring together. You pull them together tightly. It's coming down. I shouldn't have done that one so close. When you bring them close together, it actually tightens the knots up against each other, those two simple knots, and makes for a very tight knot that doesn't come undone very easily. In fact, even when you clip off your yarn ends and crop them very closely, it creates a knot that's very tight, that even if you pull it very tight, it will oftentimes not even break at the, like undo the knot, it will actually break the yarn before it will break the knot. The one problem that I found with this is that it's complex to do. I had to look it up quite a few times over the course of the times that I first started using it, but it's also a rather large knot. And so if you're going to try to hide that in the back of your work, you need to make sure you've got a rather plush fabric that you can kind of hide the knot in. But it's a good knot to do. Finally, more recently, somebody just taught me about something they call the weaver's knot. So if I have my two ends of yarn, the weaver knot is a very simple knot to do. You basically create a simple slip knot. So people tell me that the easiest way to do a slip knot is to just wrap it around two fingers and then over the first one and then reach underneath and pull it through. But at any rate, you create a slip knot any way that you care to. It's just a standard slip knot. Then you take your other end and you put it through the hole in the through the loop in the slip knot. Take the two ends of the slip knot and tighten it up. And as you do, when you pull it tightly, it will actually snap a little bit as it pulls the yarn through the loop and secures it in there, the connecting yarn. Hold on. Did you hear that little snap? It actually snaps it into place and creates this incredibly tight knot. And then I can clip off very closely the two ends of the yarns, and you have a very small knot that's hard to detect. I didn't even clip it that close, and it's still very small, and it's very secure. So secure that, in fact, again, if you were to pull this yarn apart, it would probably break the yarn before it would actually undo the knot. So now I'm going to plan on using the slip knot version or the weaver's knot to be able to do this.